In October 1962, a highly unusual group of radical thinkers stepped out of the shadows and into the halls of St. Peter's. Just years, sometimes months prior, these exact same men were officially flagged by Rome as dangerous. They were blacklisted, their books were banned, their faculty stripped, and their mail intercepted by Vatican intelligence. Yet, when the council convened, the cage doors suddenly unlocked. These theological outcasts weren't just allowed into the room, they were handed the pens to rewrite the rules of global Catholicism. Why would a traditional, fiercely protective hierarchy hand the keys to the kingdom to the very men they spent decades trying to suppress? Let's look at 6 of these men and uncover how the Vatican's outcasts became the authors of its future. The first man walked into the Second Vatican Council through a door that should not have been opened to him. Marie-Dominique Chenu was a French Dominican whose central conviction was considered genuinely threatening to Rome. He believed that Christian doctrine did not exist in a sealed vacuum, but was shaped by time, culture, and human history. He called this historical consciousness. Rome called it dangerous. In 1942, the Holy Office placed his work on the Index of Forbidden Books. Chenu was stripped of his academic post, exiled to Paris, and placed under a strict censorship regime. He was officially marked as a man the church did not trust. But when 1962 arrived, Chenu found a loophole. He could not attend the council as an official expert, so he entered through the back door. The Bishop of Madagascar brought him to Rome as his personal advisor, giving Chenu direct access to the council's working group. Inside, Chenu introduced a single 4-word phrase that became the cornerstone of Gaudium et Spes, the signs of the time, the idea that the church must constantly read and adapt to human history. A man who spent 20 years banned from writing freely ultimately defined how the global church interacts with the modern world. The second man was not even supposed to be in Rome. John Courtney Murray was an American Jesuit who argued that the American model of religious freedom was a positive moral good. This directly contradicted the Vatican's traditional stance that Catholicism must be the official state religion and tolerating other faiths was merely a practical compromise. Murray argued that true religious freedom was a fundamental human right. Cardinal Alfredo Ottaviani, the head of the Holy Office and Rome's most powerful enforcer, found this unacceptable. In 1955, Ottaviani had Murray completely silenced, ordering him to cease publishing on the topic of church and state. When the council opened, Murray's name was explicitly left off the list of theological experts, but Cardinal Francis Spellman of New York bypassed the Holy Office and brought Murray to Rome personally. What followed was one of the most complete reversals in modern Catholic history. The man Rome had silenced became the primary drafter of Dignitatis Humanae, the Council's formal declaration on religious freedom. Murray lived to see the exact theology he was punished for written into the Council's permanent record. In his own words, if Murray's suppression was surgical, what the Holy Office did to Yves Congar was closer to a systematic demolition. Congar was a French Dominican whose work focused on ecumenism, the pursuit of unity among different Christian denominations, and the active role of everyday laypeople in the church. The Holy Office dismantled his life. Following the 1950 encyclical Humani Generis, Congar was removed from his teaching position and exiled to Jerusalem, then Rome, then Cambridge. He was placed under a censorship regime of extraordinary severity. His mail was intercepted. His movements were restricted. In his private journals, he documented the deep psychological isolation, writing that he felt he had been buried alive. But in 1960, everything changed. In a shock to the Roman Curia, Pope John XXIII personally appointed Congar as a council expert. The rehabilitation was abrupt and absolute. Congar arrived at the council and drafted its most foundational documents on the nature of the church and ecumenism. The outcast who was treated like a traitor was elevated to a cardinal by Pope John Paul II shortly before his death. The fourth man's suppression began with a single argument that Rome found philosophically intolerable. Henri de Lubac was a French Jesuit whose 1946 work, Sur Naturel, argued that the desire for God is built into human nature itself. We are hardwired for the divine. Roman theologians feared this destroyed the concept of grace as a completely free gift. The backlash was swift and severe. De Lubac was removed from his professorship. His books were pulled from Jesuit libraries across the globe. His theological career was effectively suspended, and he spent a decade working quietly in the shadows. His rehabilitation arrived when he was named a consultant to the council's preparatory commission. At the council, de Lubac's vast knowledge of the early church provided the historical framework the reforming bishops desperately needed. There, he formed a deep intellectual bond with a young Polish bishop named Karol Wojtyła. Wojtyła was profoundly influenced by de Lubac's vision of humanity. When Wojtyła later became Pope John Paul II, he made de Lubac a cardinal. The man whose books had been banned received his red hat from the bishop whose mind those very books had helped shape. The fifth man's story does not end at the council. It continues past it, and that is where the controversy begins. Gregory Baum was a German-born Canadian theologian who came to the council with a historically urgent assignment: transforming the church's relationship with the Jewish people. Baum authored the first draft of Nostra Aetate, the groundbreaking document that repudiated anti-Semitism and fundamentally healed Catholic-Jewish relations. His contribution to the council was immense, but what happened after the council was something entirely different. Baum became a massive critic of official Catholic teaching. He publicly rejected the encyclical Humanae Vitae and its ban on artificial contraception. He embraced Marxist sociology. Eventually, he left the priesthood and married. In his later memoirs, published years later, Baum revealed his homosexuality, stating his vow of celibacy had merely been a way to hide from his true identity. Baum's post-council trajectory illustrates the deep fracture the council created between those who viewed its reforms as a completion of tradition and those who saw them as a license to walk entirely away from it. The sixth man is the strangest case of all, carrying a mystery that has never been fully explained. Archbishop Annibale Bugnini was not a silenced theologian. He was the ultimate insider. As the secretary of the Commission on the Liturgy, Bugnini was the chief architect behind the most comprehensive transformation of Catholic worship in 4 centuries. The vernacular Mass, the repositioned altars, the new Eucharistic prayers. Bugnini's hand was in all of it. For over a decade, he was the single most influential figure in how 1 billion Catholics prayed. And then, in July 1975, he suddenly fell from grace. Pope Paul VI abruptly removed Bugnini from power without any public explanation. He was exiled as the papal ambassador to Iran, a country with a microscopic Catholic population. A theory quickly circulated that a briefcase had been left behind in the Vatican containing documents linking Bugnini to Freemasonry. Masonic membership is strictly incompatible with the Catholic priesthood. The document, if it exists, has never been produced, and Bugnini denied the accusations until his death. But the vacancy remained. The most consequential liturgical architect of the 20th century was exiled to Tehran by the pope he served, for reasons that remain officially unstated to this day. 6 men, 6 careers dismantled by the institution they served, only to be handed the pens that authored its future. What do we make of this? Was the initial suppression simply the friction necessary to test these ideas before they were unleashed on the universal church? Or did a fearful hierarchy suppress genuine truth for decades, only to be corrected by the undeniable pressure of history? The relationship between orthodoxy, reform, and the Holy Spirit is rarely clean. Where do you stand? Was the Second Vatican Council a spirit-driven renewal, or did it unlock doors that were meant to stay closed? Let us know in the comments below. Subscribe for more deep dives into church history, and we will see you in the next one.